Evan Hale wiped his hands on the greasy cloth, his fingers blackened from hours of repairing old starship engines. The Edge station hung on the rim of the nebular expanse, a place forgotten by most of the galaxy. Ships arrived and left only when they had no other choice, and news traveled slower than a comet. To outsiders, it was nothing more than a rusted collection of platforms floating in empty space. To Evan, it was home. He leaned back against the side of a freighter, breathing in the recycled air of the hangar. The sound of hissing hydraulics and creaking metal filled the space like a constant, low music. Life here was quiet, predictable, safe. At least it used to be. The first sign that the day would be different was the faint ping on the station sensors. Evan frowned. Visitors were rare, and an incoming ship meant work, but not always good work. He tapped a few keys on the console. The screen displayed a small civilian vessel, battered and barely recognizable under layers of repair patches and scorch marks. "Looks like someone had a rough trip," he muttered. He grabbed his tool kit and headed toward the docking bay, unaware that this ship carried someone who would change the course of his life, and the galaxy itself. The airlock hissed as he opened it, revealing the interior of the ship. The smell of burnt circuits and ozone was strong. Among the wreckage, a woman sat slumped in the pilot's seat. Her clothes were simple and her face smudged with dirt, but there was something about her posture that suggested resilience. She was not just tired, she had survived. Evan crouched beside her. "Hey, you okay? I can help you get out." Her voice was soft, almost unassuming, but it carried an edge of authority that Evan didn't fully understand. "Don't worry," he said, offering his hand. "I'll get you out safely, just hang on." He didn't help for payment or for fame or for recognition. He helped because it was right. It was a human instinct he had learned early in life. Sometimes, doing the right thing meant risking everything. Carefully, he guided her out of the seat and toward the airlock. Her movements were deliberate, measured, as though every step was calculated to preserve strength. Evan noticed the faint hum of her personal devices, quietly hidden beneath her clothing. He had seen a lot of ships and a lot of people, but something about her was different. Once she was safely outside, he examined her injuries. Nothing life-threatening, but she needed rest and proper care. He led her to the small infirmary on the station, a place with more first aid kits than real medical staff. "I'm Evan Hale," he said, trying to make conversation as he cleaned a scratch on her arm. "You got a name. Don't worry, you'll be safe here." And when she laughed at his stories or made a dry joke, Evan realized something rare. She was enjoying herself. He had no idea that Mara was far from ordinary. Behind her quiet demeanor, she held wealth, power, and influence beyond measure. She was the owner of mega-corporations, trade routes, and fleets that spanned entire star systems. Yet here she was, blending in with humans on a forgotten station, hiding from enemies that would kill to control her. Evan continued to work tirelessly on her ship, ignoring the strange interference on the station's sensors. It wasn't until one night, as he polished the last piece of the engine, that he noticed shadows moving outside the station perimeter. He squinted at the screen. A small fleet had appeared, ships sleek and armed with precision weapons. They weren't hiding, they were searching. He froze, heart pounding. "Mara," he said, turning toward her. She was in the corner of the hangar, observing him silently. Her expression was calm, almost serene, but Evan could feel her tension beneath the surface. "They've found me," she said softly. "But you have no idea what you've stepped into." But this was different. It was bigger than anything he had ever imagined. "Then what do we do?" he asked. "We survive," she said, her voice firm, "and we make sure they don't hurt anyone else while I do it." He realized in that moment that humanity's strength wasn't just in technology or firepower. It was in courage, in choosing to do what was right even when the odds were impossible. Over the next few hours, Evan helped Mara prepare the station for defense. They reinforced shields, reprogrammed security systems, and stocked escape routes. Mara observed silently, occasionally giving instructions that seemed mundane but were critical. Evan couldn't fully understand the depth of her experience, but he followed her lead. When the enemy ships finally approached, the station hummed with energy, ready to resist. Mara's eyes were steady, her hands calm. Evan felt a strange sense of awe. Here was someone with the power to command fleets, to influence economies, to change the fate of worlds, yet she relied on the judgment of a human mechanic on a forgotten station. The first shots fired, lights flickered, and the hull vibrated with distant explosions. Evan's heart raced, but he didn't panic. He had a job to do. And more than that, he had made a choice, to protect life, to protect those who could not protect themselves. Hours passed in a tense blur. Evan moved tirelessly, repairing damage, keeping systems online. Mara coordinated from the bridge, her voice calm, precise, giving orders that saved lives. Together, they managed to hold the station long enough for a narrow escape. As the enemy ships retreated, Evan finally allowed himself to breathe. The station was battered, but it stood. And Mara, she turned to him, a faint smile on her face. "You did well," she said. "Most people would have fled or hidden. You didn't." "I just helped." The galaxy was still vast and dangerous, but for the first time he felt a part of something bigger, something that mattered. As he watched Mara board her repaired ship, Evan realized that life in the outer sectors would never be the same. The woman he helped was no ordinary traveler. She was a force that could shape the galaxy. And he, just a human mechanic, had a role to play. The stars outside the station twinkled, silent witnesses to the beginning of an extraordinary story. A story of courage, humanity, and unexpected heroes. And for Evan Hale, it had all started with a simple choice: to help someone in need. The station hummed with quiet activity, but the tension lingered like a shadow over every metal corridor. Evan Hale moved through the hangar, checking systems that had been damaged during the enemy attack the night before. Sparks still flickered from some of the old conduits, and the recycled air smelled faintly of burnt circuits. He was exhausted, but he refused to stop. There was too much to do. Mara sat on a crate near the docking bay, her calm presence contrasting sharply with the chaos that had surrounded them hours earlier. She watched him work, her eyes unreadable, yet filled with something Evan couldn't quite name. Gratitude, relief, perhaps both. "You don't have to do this alone," she said softly. Evan shook his head. "I could never just sit back and watch. Not after what happened. And that is why humanity is dangerous in the best way possible." Yet here was Mara, speaking as if what he did, what any human could do, mattered. The quiet was broken by a sharp alarm. The station's sensors had picked up something moving in the outer perimeter. Evan's heart skipped a beat. Not again. It seems my enemies never rest. A galaxy filled with enemies, powerful fleets, and dangerous secrets, and somehow he, a simple mechanic, was involved. The thought should have frightened him, but strangely it didn't. Instead, he felt a sense of purpose he had never known before. He followed Mara to the command console. She pointed at the approaching ships. "They are scanning for my ship's signature. If they detect it, they will strike immediately. I need to remain hidden until I can leave this sector safely." Evan rerouted power to decoy signals, modified the station's sensor outputs, and reinforced shields around the docking bays. Mara guided him with calm authority, giving precise instructions that were always just enough to keep him on the right path. Evan couldn't help but notice her patience. She didn't rush. She didn't panic. Every word, every gesture was deliberate. By the time the first scouts appeared, the station was ready. Evan watched the enemy ships approach, their sleek hulls gleaming against the blackness of space. Mara's calm presence gave him courage. He realized that what she lacked in size or weapons, she made up for in strategy, foresight, and sheer intelligence. The scouts passed by, confused by the altered sensor signals. Some turned back, others drifted aimlessly as if they had lost their bearings. Evan felt a surge of relief. "It worked," he whispered. Mara nodded. "For now, but this is only the beginning. They will not give up easily, and there are others who would use me as a weapon, others who see my wealth and power as theirs to claim." "Who are you, really?" He had known she was different, but this was beyond anything he could have imagined. "All this, and you were just sitting here on this station with me." But never anyone like Mara, never anyone whose life or death could change the fate of the entire galaxy. And yet here he was, working alongside her, not for reward, not for recognition, but simply because it was the right thing to do. As the day turned into night, or whatever passed for night on a station orbiting a dim sun, Evan realized something else. Humanity had value not because of power, wealth, or technology, but because of courage, kindness, and the willingness to act when it mattered most. That was something no fleet or fortune could replicate. Their quiet moments were interrupted by another ping on the sensors. This time, the fleet was larger, not just scouts, but fully armed warships. Mara's calm demeanor didn't waver, but Evan could feel the tension in her eyes. "They are coming for me," she said softly. "Soon they will bring everything they have. They are mercenaries, assassins, and pirates. They will not hesitate. If they reach this station, no one will survive." Evan and Mara worked side by side, rerouting energy, adjusting shields, and coordinating countermeasures. Every moment was critical. Every decision mattered. During a brief pause, Mara leaned against the console. "I've spent decades building my power," she said quietly. "And yet, it is the people I meet along the way who remind me what it truly means to matter. You, Evan Hale, you matter more than you realize. You remind me that power is meaningless without people who choose to use it wisely." The fleet drew closer, their weapon systems lighting up against the black backdrop of space. Evan and Mara worked tirelessly through the night, coordinating the station's defenses. Every blast of energy, every warning alarm, every calculated reroute of power brought them closer to survival. Finally, just before dawn, the enemy ships hesitated. Their sensors were fooled. Their attack plans disrupted. Evan watched in awe as Mara's strategic mind guided the outcome. It was not brute strength that saved them, but intelligence, courage, and the ability to act decisively when it mattered most. When the fleet finally retreated, Evan slumped against the console, exhausted beyond belief. Mara approached, her presence calm and reassuring. "You did well," she said softly. "Humanity's courage, it is remarkable. It gives hope where none should exist. That is why humanity matters." And as he watched Mara prepare to leave once again, Evan understood that this was only the beginning. The galaxy was vast and dangerous, filled with enemies who would stop at nothing to claim power. But for the first time, he knew humanity had a place in that vast expanse, not because of ships, weapons, or titles, but because of the courage to act when it mattered most. Mara's ship was ready, her path charted through the expanse, avoiding detection. Yet she hesitated before boarding, looking back at Evan. "Thank you," she said simply, "for seeing me as a person, for reminding me why I fight, and for proving that humans are more powerful than they realize. Someone needs to make sure you're safe out there." Evan watched as she disappeared into the void, leaving behind a station battered but standing, and a human mechanic forever changed by the knowledge that courage, kindness, and humanity could shape the fate of the stars themselves. Days passed on the Edge station, but peace was a fragile illusion. Evan Hale moved through the corridors, repairing systems and checking on supplies, but he couldn't shake the memory of the fleet that had chased Mara just days before. Every creak of metal and hiss of recycled air reminded him that danger could return at any moment. Mara's ship had left the station under the cover of darkness, but she returned almost immediately, disguised as a different traveler. Evan didn't know why at first. She had everything: ships, wealth, fleets. She could move anywhere, vanish anywhere, yet here she was again, seeking the quiet of a place few noticed. "You shouldn't have come back," Evan said, wiping his hands on a cloth. "You're putting yourself at risk." "I just did what any decent person would do." Evan explained, showing her the workshops, the small farms, the life support systems humans had improvised on the station. To her, it was more than curiosity, it was study. She was learning from him in a way that no amount of wealth or education could teach. But peace could not last. One evening, alarms blared across the station. Sensors detected multiple ships approaching at high speed, moving with precision that suggested purpose. Evan's heart thudded. Not again. Not just fight, we survive, and we reveal the truth. He had suspected she was extraordinary, but this was beyond anything he had imagined. "Why are you telling me this now?" It was overwhelming, but he didn't hesitate. "Then I'll help you," he said firmly, "whatever it takes." He had faced danger before, but this was different. This was a battle not just for survival, but for principles, courage, humanity, and loyalty. Mara guided him through the station's control room. "We need to deceive them, mislead them, make them think I am somewhere I am not. That's how we survive." He rerouted sensor signals, manipulated communication channels, and adjusted shields to create illusions of activity in empty sectors. Mara's mind moved like a chess master, predicting every possible move. Evan realized that intelligence, not brute force, was her greatest weapon. As the enemy ships moved closer, Mara revealed more than Evan expected. She accessed secure communication channels, speaking in a language he didn't understand. Ships far from the station received her commands, and to Evan's astonishment, they immediately altered their courses. Entire fleets obeyed her voice as if it carried the weight of the galaxy itself. Evan stepped back, awe-filled. "All this, you command them with just words." "Words, strategy, reputation, all are weapons if used wisely. But none of this matters if people like you don't act. Humanity's courage is something even the most powerful fleets cannot replicate." Mara moved between consoles, calm and precise, coordinating a defense that was more about survival than destruction. Finally, the enemy sent a boarding party, sleek ships docking forcibly against the station. Evan grabbed his tools, turning them into makeshift weapons. "I guess it's our turn," he muttered. Mara's voice was steady. "We protect the civilians first. Then we stop them." The intruders were skilled, but they underestimated the humans who refused to yield. Evan and Mara led a coordinated defense, using the station's environment to their advantage. Hallways were rerouted, doors sealed, and energy pulses redirected to slow the enemy. Each move bought time, and every second mattered. During a brief pause in the chaos, Mara looked at Evan. "You've done something extraordinary. You've shown that humans are more than tools or soldiers. You've shown that they are unpredictable, courageous, and capable of acts that change the course of history. That is why I chose to trust you. And you relied on me." Humanity had a place in this vast expanse, not because of what they built, but because of what they were willing to do. Mara's presence remained calm, but Evan could see the burden she carried. The galaxy was full of enemies, and she was their target, yet she had chosen to trust him, a human mechanic, to stand with her. That choice, simple as it seemed, was monumental. Days turned into weeks, and Mara continued her lessons. About strategy, about courage, about the value of people. Evan learned that power without humanity was hollow, that decisions without moral weight could destroy entire worlds. And he also learned that humanity's greatest strength was often overlooked, the willingness to act, to help, to stand for what is right, even when the odds seemed impossible. One evening, Mara looked at him seriously. "The galaxy is watching, Evan, and so far humans have only shown what I have witnessed here, courage, ingenuity, and the capacity to act without fear. But the true test is coming. Soon, the decisions you and your people make will determine not just survival, but the future of entire star systems. And in the grand scheme of the galaxy, humanity's true power is only now beginning to reveal itself. And sometimes it only took a simple act, helping someone in need, to set the wheels of destiny in motion." Mara's voice, calm but filled with quiet authority, echoed through the station. "Remember this, Evan Hale, the smallest acts of courage can change the fate of billions. And you have already begun." As he returned to his work, repairing systems and preparing for whatever came next, Evan realized that life had changed forever. Mara had revealed her true power, and with it, the galaxy had taken notice. But for Evan, the lesson was simple. Humans survive not because of titles or fleets, but because they act when it matters most. And somewhere beyond the stars, the galaxy waited, watching, challenging, and testing humanity's courage in ways no one could yet imagine. The Edge station had changed. What had once been a quiet, forgotten outpost was now buzzing with activity, though not the kind that came from trade or travel. Evan Hale moved through the corridors, his hands full of tools, fixing systems that Mara insisted be reinforced. The station's shields had been upgraded, its sensors recalibrated, and its communication systems made nearly untraceable. Yet despite the work, the tension never fully lifted. The galaxy was watching. Mara stood at the observation deck, looking out into the expanse. Ships streaked across the void, some familiar, some unknown, and all moving with purpose. Her eyes reflected distant stars, yet they held focus sharp enough to slice through the blackness of space. Evan approached quietly, not wanting to interrupt, but drawn by her calm presence. "They won't stop," he said softly. "The galaxy, they'll come after you again. You can't hide forever. And because I trust humans like you to do what is right, not what is expected, that is something rare. And right now, the galaxy needs humans to show what that really means." Mara's enemies were gathering forces, attempting to strike strategically across nearby systems. Trade routes were threatened, minor colonies were destabilized, and entire fleets were repositioning to intercept her. The galaxy was reacting. Slowly, carefully, like a predator circling a cornered prey. Evan stared at the communications board, feeling a mixture of awe and fear. They're moving fast. How can we stop them? Humans act without calculation, without expectation of reward. They surprise everyone, even the most experienced strategists. And if they see humans standing with me, defending what is right, they will have to rethink what power really means. Evan and the small crew of engineers worked tirelessly, modifying ships, rerouting energy systems, and setting up defensive grids in every accessible section. Mara coordinated with distant allies, sending strategic commands that made fleets hesitate before attacking. The galaxy was learning something new. Power was not just wealth or weapons, it was the courage to act, the intelligence to adapt, and the determination to protect life without expecting anything in return. One morning, scouts arrived, sleek ships attempting to probe the station. But Evan and Mara were ready. The humans on the station worked together, improvising tactics, using the environment to their advantage, and coordinating with Mara's fleets. To outsiders, it might have seemed like chaos, but it was strategy in motion, humans acting decisively, unpredictably, and with relentless courage. Evan found himself in the heart of the control room, adjusting energy flows while coordinating shield defenses. Mara's voice guided him calmly, giving precise instructions. Divert power to Sector 7, reroute auxiliary shields to the docking bays, and prepare countermeasures for boarding parties. Diverting power now, countermeasures ready. Evan realized something remarkable. The humans' courage, ingenuity, and willingness to act without expectation of reward made them a force no fleet could ignore. Hours passed, the station under constant threat, yet the humans persisted. Mara observed quietly, guiding, teaching, and letting them take the lead where they excelled. She realized that no amount of wealth or fleet strength could replicate the determination of beings who acted because it was right. By evening, the enemy ships had retreated. Damage had been minimal compared to the scale of the attack, and the humans had proven their worth. Mara walked through the station, observing the exhausted faces of engineers, mechanics, and volunteers. Each one had acted with bravery, often improvising solutions in moments of crisis. She felt a deep respect for humanity, for its unpredictability and its courage. Evan collapsed onto a crate, wiping sweat and grime from his face. I can't believe we did it. We actually held them off. Humans are remarkable because they act when others hesitate. They survive because they care, because they innovate, and because they refuse to yield. You've reminded them that humans are capable of courage that changes the course of events. That is power. A single station, defended by humans and guided by one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, had become a symbol. Evan began to see the consequences of their actions. Trade routes stabilized, colonies felt safer, and even minor fleets began to respect humanity in ways they had not before. Mara explained it simply. When humans act without expectation, they change perception. And perception influences the galaxy. And the galaxy will remember that. One day, humans will not be underestimated, and it will start with you, all of you here, standing when others fled, acting when others hesitated. Yet in that moment, he understood that humanity's true strength lay not in what they had, but in what they were willing to do. Courage, ingenuity, compassion, these were the tools that could shape the galaxy more than fleets or wealth ever could. Mara's presence remained steady, yet Evan could see the weight she carried. The galaxy was vast, full of enemies, and she could not face it alone. But humanity, unpredictable and courageous, had become an ally she could trust. That realization filled her with a quiet hope she had not felt in decades. As the stars glimmered beyond the observation deck, Mara spoke quietly. Evan, you and your people have done something extraordinary. You've shown that humans are more than observers. They are participants, and sometimes they are the difference between survival and destruction. Never forget that. Humanity's place in the stars was not granted by power, but earned through courage, ingenuity, and the willingness to face impossible odds. And somewhere in the vast blackness beyond the station, the galaxy watched humans stand tall. It saw their courage, their ingenuity, and their refusal to yield. It learned something new, that sometimes the smallest acts, repairing a ship, helping someone in need, standing when others would hide, could ripple across the stars, shaping the future in ways no one could predict. Mara turned to Evan one last time that evening, her eyes reflecting distant suns. The galaxy is changing, Evan, and humans are at the heart of that change. Remember what you have done here, because it is only the beginning. Humanity will be seen, not for what it builds, not for what it owns, but for what it is willing to do. And that is more powerful than anything else in the universe. The galaxy was vast and dangerous, but humanity had shown that courage, ingenuity, and moral strength mattered more than any fleet or fortune. And as he prepared for whatever challenges lay ahead, Evan knew one thing for certain. Humans had arrived, and the universe would never forget them. The galaxy was watching. Systems that had once ignored humanity now turned their sensors toward the edge station. Trade fleets, military patrols, and diplomatic vessels moved cautiously, aware that something had shifted. Evan Hale walked through the station, his hands full of tools and a mind full of plans. Even after all they had done, the weight of responsibility pressed on him. The universe had seen humans act with courage, ingenuity, and moral clarity, and now the consequences were unfolding. Mara stood in the observation deck, calm yet alert. Her presence radiated authority, yet she was not commanding a fleet with fear or force. She was leading by example, by demonstrating strategy, intelligence, and respect for life. Evan approached her, curiosity and apprehension mixed in his gaze. "What now?" he asked. "The fleets, the systems, they've seen us. What happens next?" "It is time the galaxy recognizes it." "That is true strength." Evan worked alongside Mara, coordinating logistics, repairing critical systems, and preparing the station to serve as a hub for humans and allies alike. He watched as Mara communicated with distant fleets, not as an overlord commanding obedience, but as a strategist guiding action, sharing intelligence, and respecting the autonomy of those who followed. For the first time, Evan understood the depth of her influence. Her power was not in domination, but in the ability to unite, to inspire, and to show what leadership could look like when tempered by intelligence and moral clarity. And humanity, unexpected, unpredictable, courageous, was at the center of that lesson. Over the following weeks, small delegations from various systems arrived at the station. Ambassadors, engineers, and observers came to witness what humans could achieve. They watched as Evan and his crew repaired damaged vessels, optimized energy systems, and solved logistical challenges that larger fleets had struggled with. They saw humans act without fear, without expectation of reward, guided only by principle. Mara addressed them formally for the first time. Her voice carried over communication channels and into the observation deck. "The galaxy has underestimated humans for too long," she said. "They are not just observers or workers. They are participants, innovators, and protectors. Today, they stand alongside me, not because of my wealth, my fleets, or my influence, but because they choose to act with courage and integrity. Humanity matters, and it will be recognized." Yet here he was, a human whose actions had inspired fleets and influenced the course of events in ways he could barely comprehend. The response from the galaxy was swift. Trade routes that had been disrupted stabilized. Minor colonies that had lived in fear now had security. Rivals and enemies reconsidered their strategies. The simple courage and ingenuity of humans had changed perception across dozens of systems. Mara's enemies no longer attacked with blind confidence. They planned, hesitated, and sometimes withdrew entirely. Evan felt a sense of purpose he had never known. Humanity had arrived in the galaxy not through conquest or domination, but through action that reflected core human values, courage, loyalty, and ingenuity. And he, a simple mechanic, had played a role in proving that humans could influence the galaxy without relying on force alone. Mara observed him quietly. "You understand now, don't you?" she asked. Evan nodded slowly. "Yes. Humans, we survive because we act when others hesitate. Because we think, because we care, because we refuse to yield. That's our strength. Humanity has earned its place among the stars." He continued his work tirelessly, not for reward, but for the simple satisfaction of seeing humanity succeed where others had doubted them. Mara's fleets remained nearby, a silent reassurance. Yet she relied on humans, not just ships, to carry forward her vision. She saw in them what she had always known, that courage, morality, and ingenuity could surpass wealth and power. And Evan, in particular, embodied that principle. He had acted without calculation, without expectation, simply because it was right. That was something the galaxy could not ignore. One evening, as the station quieted and distant stars shimmered in the void, Mara and Evan walked through the observation deck together. The hum of the station was soothing, and the lights reflected in the metal surfaces around them. "You know," Mara said softly, "I could command fleets, enforce loyalty, and demand obedience, but none of that would matter without people like you. You are proof that humanity's true strength is not in what it owns or builds, but in what it is willing to do. Courage, loyalty, ingenuity, these are forces the galaxy cannot ignore, and today humans are seen for what they truly are." Now his actions, and the actions of those like him, had influenced the course of entire systems. The galaxy was taking notice, not because of fear, but because of respect. The next morning, a delegation from a neighboring system arrived at the station. They had heard of the humans' ingenuity, their courage, and their steadfastness. Mara welcomed them with her usual calm authority, but she let Evan and his team demonstrate what humans could do. Engineers repaired damaged vessels with precision. Pilots coordinated maneuvers that rivaled seasoned fleets, and every action was guided by intelligence, courage, and a refusal to act selfishly. The visitors were amazed. They had expected chaos, weakness, or improvisation, but they saw humans act decisively, intelligently, and honorably. Mara watched their reactions, satisfied. The galaxy was learning a new lesson. Humans were not to be underestimated. Days later, Mara called Evan to the observation deck. "Look," she said, pointing at the viewport. Across several systems, trade ships moved efficiently, fleets coordinated, and colonies thrived. This is the result of what you've shown. Courage, ingenuity, and morality, these are forces that ripple across the galaxy. Humans have made themselves seen, and they will continue to influence the future. He had never sought recognition, yet he realized that humanity's place in the stars was secure, not through conquest, not through fear, but through action, courage, and choice. Mara smiled, her expression softening. "You've proven something extraordinary, Evan Hale. You've shown that humans matter not because of what they own, but because of what they do. And that is a force that no power in the galaxy can ignore." Yet humanity had demonstrated its true value: the courage to act when it was needed most, the ingenuity to solve problems others could not, and the moral clarity to do what was right without expectation of reward. And in that moment, Evan knew that life on the edge of the galaxy had changed forever. Humanity had arrived, not as conquerors, but as a force of principle and courage. Mara had revealed her power, yes, but it was humanity's courage, ingenuity, and moral strength that had truly shaped the events. The stars outside twinkled as if in agreement. Somewhere across the galaxy, systems took notice. Humans had proven that they mattered not because of weapons or wealth, but because of who they were and what they could do. Mara turned to Evan one last time, her voice quiet but filled with meaning. "The galaxy will remember this, Evan. Humans are no longer just survivors. They are participants, protectors, and innovators. And it began with you. Never forget that your actions and those of your people have changed the course of the stars." He only needed to know that humanity had proven itself. And as he looked out into the void, he felt the quiet pride of knowing that humans, small, fragile, yet courageous, had left their mark on the galaxy forever. The Edge Station thrummed with life, humans working together, creating, protecting, and innovating. Mara's fleets remained near, but they were no longer the central force. Humans had taken the lead in their own way. The galaxy had learned to respect them, and humanity's influence would only grow from this point forward. And somewhere in the infinite expanse, Mara reflected on one simple truth: power alone was meaningless without courage, loyalty, and ingenuity. Humanity had proven all three. Evan returned to his workshop, quietly fixing systems, teaching younger engineers, and ensuring the station ran smoothly. He had no titles, no fleets, no wealth, but he had something far more important: proof that humans could stand for what was right, act when it mattered most, and influence the galaxy through courage, ingenuity, and principle. And that was enough.